my wife, I love her.
Will do.
I can't believe we're about to do this.
Welcome to Find Your Outdoors. I'm your host, Frank Willem, and I'm here today with Brittany. For most people, Africa is a mysterious place filled with exotic animals. I know it was for me, and not one that I ever imagined visiting before our impulsive decision led Brittany and I to go there.
Hey, wait. It was your impulsive decision that got us into that, not ours. In fact, I seem to recall a discussion in which we both agreed that Africa was not on our future list of travel spots. I believe it was just before you committed to that trip.
Whatever. Now, we arrived in Johannesburg after a 20-hour-long flight where we were met at the airport and took a quick shuttle ride to the Africa Sky Hotel. We managed to stay awake through dinner and then crashed to recover from the long flight. The next morning, we boarded vans to travel to our primary destination, the Madaka Ranch, located about 300 miles southeast of Johannesburg. Madaka is truly a remarkable place with classic big game everywhere you look, from zebras to giraffes to ostriches and a whole range of other plains game, impala, elands, gemsbuck, wildebeest, bushbucks, buffalo, nyala, and on and on and on. They were all there running free in the thousands of acres spread over 11 square miles that constitute the Madaka Ranch.
We had a great time there, and it was one of the most incredible experiences of our lives. So we want to tell you all about it, but first, let's talk about sharks.
I've been scuba diving since I got certified in high school, and one thing I've learned is that if you dive very often, you're gonna encounter sharks. I spoke with Coast Guard helicopter pilots who told me that the places that we used to dive in South Florida during grad school were infested with sharks. Yet we never encountered a single one while diving there.
Most often, divers encounter species such as reef sharks, black tips, white tips, or nurse sharks, though the more serious predators like hammerheads or tiger sharks sometimes come sniffing around.
You may recall some of our previous FYO shark experiences.
But of all the sharks, the type that tends to get most folks' attention is great whites. These sharks are at the very top of the oceanic food chain and generally are regarded as fearsome.
I'll say. And one of the best places to find great whites is in Cape Town, South Africa. And when we come back, we're going to head there. We boarded our plane in Johannesburg and took the 2-hour flight 870 miles to southwest to Cape Town, where we spent our second week exploring more of South Africa.
All of this was great fun and we truly enjoyed it, but for us, the main reason to travel to Cape Town is great whites, that is. Jill Hendon with the Gulf Coast Research Lab is no stranger to FYO. You may recall previous episodes where she appeared to chat about sharks.
Jill knows a lot about a lot of shark species, and even though great whites are not typically encountered in her work, she knows plenty about them and is here to fill us in.
One of the most well-known sharks is the great white shark, and this shark is really common in the Atlantic, Indian, and Pacific Oceans. It's not very common in the Gulf of Mexico. However, it definitely does occur here. And as we have done more studies on this particular species, we're finding that more of them are showing up in the Gulf of Mexico. Our group, the Shark Research Program, does not focus on this species much simply because it's not in our area, but the researchers on the East Coast who have satellite tagged these animals have shown them coming into our particular waters in the northern Gulf of Mexico, only temporarily. They're really unique creatures. These guys can get up to 20 feet in length. They can be 2.5 tons in weight. They've been shown to achieve ages of approximately 70 years, which is a very long lifetime for a fish species. They mature at about 10 to 15 years of age, and when they do breed, they are having 2 to 10 pups at a time. But when these guys are born, they might be 4 to 5 feet in length and already 100 pounds. So we're talking about some pretty immense creatures. They are the largest predatory fish in our waters, so there's something to be said for learning more about their ecology. Most of these predatory fish do show migration patterns, and a lot of times it's really driven by the food source. They need to be able to go where they are going to get the food source they need. Another reason a lot of these guys migrate is because of temperature. Because they have this large body size, they need to stay in water temperatures that are reasonable for them. So the Gulf of Mexico is typically considered too warm, which is why you're going to see more great whites over in the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans where the water is cooler. Great whites are considered vulnerable by the International Union for the Conservation of Animals. And this is really driven by the fact that they are top predators. They have to eat a lot to maintain their body size, they have few young, they are long-lived and don't give birth to many young, and so all of these factors compound their ability to sustain their population numbers. They have become the target of sport fishing lately. They have been caught as bycatch in commercial fisheries, and all of these different factors tend to impact their already low numbers, which can severely complicate their future numbers and sustainability.
Well, thanks, Jill, for all the latest on great whites.
When we come back, you'll get to meet some, up close and personal. On our recent trip to South Africa, we could hardly resist a trip to Cape Town to cage dive with great whites in one of the top 5 places in the world.
At first, I wasn't too enthused about the prospect of diving with great whites, but when faced with the choice between possibly being eaten alive or facing the ridicule of friends like Dr. Don Gaddy, I readily agreed to do it. Now, Don and I have fished and dove on a number of trips ranging from the northern Gulf to the Florida Keys and on to Central America in places like Costa Rica, Guatemala, and Panama. But diving with great whites was not something either of us had done.
But not only was he up for it, he recruited his wife, the lovely Katie Gaddy, and kids to go as well.
I always wanted to do some kind of shark dive. I have scuba dived with Frank before and with some other people, and we've been around some sharks, but not any great white sharks. And I had heard a lot about diving with great white sharks, so it was kind of on my bucket list, and I wanted to do that. And if you're going to go over to the Cape Horn area of Africa, that's the place to dive with great whites. So I said, I'm doing it. And I told my wife that, and she said, no, you're not. And I said, yes, I am. And by the way, you are too.
I, out of everybody, was the most concerned about it. My kids, Don, they all wanted to do it. And then people were showing me videos of the shark getting in the cage. So I was nervous, but so it was.
And she said, no way, I'm not going to do it. Well, finally convinced her that she needed to at least go. I wasn't sure she was going to get in there.
Any last words at all? You want me to give your love to Don?
Yeah.
But she did. She, you know, when you're there, you got to do like everybody else is. So they, I think, had a good time doing it.
We left Cape Town to drive 100 miles southeast to Gansby on Van Dix Bay, where we had breakfast, a briefing, and then boarded the boat. Interestingly, the small harbor has a launch ramp but no boat slips, so each day they haul the boats and then launch them the next day. After a brief 20-minute boat ride, we arrived at the site and watched as they deployed the cage and began stirring the chum bucket.
I was a little nervous, but then when we went and sat down, I felt better. Besides sitting back by the chum bucket, that wasn't the funnest thing on there. And then just making sure, because I have people in my family that get seasick, so I had to look out for that.
Any last comments?
I was very seasick at the time, which was horrible. I just had to hope that I didn't throw up. It was pretty bad.
Yeah, there were some big swells that I thought might cause some nausea and stuff, and it did. But you know, I knew that if we prepared correctly and took medications ahead of time, that we should be okay. And I think everybody did pretty good with it.
Not really. I was just sitting next to Vincent because I was really seasick too, just watching the horizon. That was it.
This was her last few minutes on this side of the earth. Any last comments?
The Dramamine's not working.
Do you want any comments for any family members you're leaving behind?
Good luck living without me.
Get him, Frank! Finding our outdoors.
I hope that's all you find.
I'm going to find a great white.
Well, I mean, yeah, I just hope you come back and test that.
During our trip planning, we had heard the water is pretty cold there. Well, it turns out that even wearing a full wetsuit and boots and a hood, it was incredibly freezing cold with water temperature in the high 50s.
Much colder than I thought, and then it started trickling down the back of your wetsuit, even with a wetsuit on, so it was cold.
It was definitely colder than I anticipated. They had said something about 70-something degrees, and you would think that that's not that cold. I can do that. No, that water was cold. And we had some thick wetsuits that I said, boy, you can't get cold in this, but oh yeah, you can.
I was a bit nervous about that, but they were very helpful with that, and it was a very heavy wetsuit, which I was thankful for because it was very cold, but your heart starts beating and it's time to go.
That was the thing, the water not being clear made it where you really didn't see the shark until he was almost on top of it.
Great whites are able to reach speeds of over 40 miles per hour, can smell blood as faint as 1 part in 10 billion, and detect movement nearly 1,000 feet away. But the dive guides assured us that like most sharks, great whites don't normally target humans, except when humans inadvertently fall into their feeding pattern, such as surfers whose silhouette is similar to that of seals. This apex ocean predator is second only to killer whales, which had arrived a season or two prior and attacked several great whites. They killed them just for the shark's tongue and liver. As a result, recent sightings have not been as frequent as in years past.
They've seen them, then they will swim all the way up the chum streak, the strongest pointers like it. That's why Canada's got the bite in me. And when the shark sees the bite,
Tell my wife I love her.
Will do.
shark wants to grab the bite. Then you just go down into the cave, but I will explain that later to you.
I can't believe we're about to do this.
That was the thing, the water not being clear made it where you really didn't see the shark until he was almost on top of it.
No.
I've never been around a creature that big in the water, and it was just to see him coming straight at you, it was amazing.
Was it so cool or so cold? Or both? Cool.
Here we are on the Cape of South Africa, and this has got to be one of the coolest things I've ever done in my life, is get down in the water with the great white shark. I mean, how stupid is that?
Being that close to such a large shark was every bit as impressive as I'd hoped.
Right. And when we finally got out of the water with teeth chattering, I truly felt lucky to have had the opportunity for this experience. Go to www.sharkcagediving.net for more info.
Well, thanks for joining us this week on Find Your Outdoors.
We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again next week for another exciting episode of FYO.